exhibition park, the real life fun of harness racing. Here they come, an exhibition park.
So we are back for part 2 of the Ingham Palmer podcast. We have a lot of material, so I didn't want to put it to 2.5 hours or 3 hours because, who knows going to watch for 3 hours? And it's easier for me to edit when it's 2 parts. So.
Yeah, well, it's gonna take some tricky editing, Scott. But it just goes to show that the folks that were kind enough to come on tonight, they just have so many glowing things to say about Ingham, not just Ingham Palmer the announcer, but Ingham Palmer the man. And you're right, it has to be broken up into a couple of shows, but that's okay. It's all good. I'm still here.
So what we're going to do now, speaking of someone Ingham mentored, I got a hold of Andrew Cromwell, which I'm kind of proud of myself. Because I had to do a little bit, years ago, what's this guy talking about? I had to do a little bit of hunting to find Andrew, because it wasn't on Facebook, but I did find his wife, and I sent a nice message to his wife, and Andrew responded and was more than willing to come on and tell a few stories about Ingham, which was great. I think everyone's going to really love Andrew's interview, because he tells some great stories about Ingham. And very knowledgeable, very nice person. So, and like everybody else, much appreciate him coming on. But I'm going to bring his video up now. If you have anything to add before I do that, Russell.
No, as I said, I don't really know Andrew Cromwell that well. I know that he did the announcing when Ingham and I were doing the racing analyst job down in the bottom of the grandstand, and a great announcer. And I'm sure he's gonna say that he learned so much from Ingham too.
Yeah, it's really great. I'm a big fan of this interview. I like all of them. I really like this one a lot. So let me go ahead and bring Andrew's interview up right about now. Guys, so the last interview we've been doing interviews all week, and it's all been coming together. We have Andrew Cromwell on here, and a lot of you people do remember Andrew. He called races at EPR. I think I'm going to try to guess the year, Andrew. I think you started, what, was it around 87, 88 you kind of started calling it?
Yeah, Ingham he was really great with young guys who were interested in that sort of thing, where he would kind of let you come in and do. I started by doing qualifiers, and then it moved on to doing a race here and a race there, and but it really started back when I had the job of I was timing the races, and so as back then, as a timer at EPR, you would do the post parades, and so you would announce the post parades, and so that's how I started, and so getting comfortable behind a microphone, and then just gradually kind of moving into that role. Like you'd show up extra early, and sometimes there were only 3 horses or 4 horses, so if you have a qualifying race with 6 or 7 or 8 horses in it, that was the challenge, right? And so once you and because of my love of harness racing at that time, you could tell most of the horses just by looking at them. You didn't need a program, just by the gear that they wore, or by who was sitting behind the horse, or just the look of the horse. A lot of as you know, a lot of horses are distinctive. Others not so much. But so that's how it kind of started with me. And I'm not even sure how long I called the races, kind of off and on over the years into the 90s. But even after I left, I always kind of had an eye on what was going on at the racetrack. And I'll never forget those provincial cups of the early to mid 80s. The one that you showed from 1984, that Winner's Accolade won in the, I don't know if it wasn't really in the mud, but the track was off. I think it was off a couple of seconds.
Yeah, it was raining.
And you can just hear the people. And when Dougie Walsh moved him out at the half, and he took off, the crowd just roared. And I can just remember watching that. It was so exciting. And so those memories, they never leave, right? So I've watched that race over and over again, even though I know the result. And the McGarrett End race had a great finish to it, those provincial cups at that point, I don't think they rivaled the Gold Cup in terms of prestigiousness, but they were pretty sought after races. I mean, Ingham I think helped, he helped to bring these fields together, I think, in some ways, and obviously, and it was almost like it was the New England / Quebec / Ontario, and then 3 or 4 of the best horses in the Maritimes.
Yeah.
And they were great races. They were fantastic races, and so yeah.
Yeah, I know. For the '84 one, I had gotten that. I think Steve Mahar actually originally gave me. I came across it a bunch of different times, and I heard a story about how that went down with the crowd. Was that Ingham's mic that he would use for the TV either broke or something happened, so they had to go with the PA. So they actually played the crowd, like, because the PA that's what they were recording off of for TV.
Yep. Yeah, but I mean, back in those days, I think CTV or ATV at the time, or they had a show, like they would pick it up, and Ingham was like, he had his headset mic on, and he was holding a mic, and might have been holding 2 mics.
Yeah,
but you could tell that it was the actual PA feed that they had picked up on, so it picked up the crowd noise, and you could really feel the excitement.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I just remember watching the race, and it didn't look like that race in particular, that Winner's Accolade was going to kind of move at the half, but I don't know, the horse behind him might have been Angel Shadow.
I think Angel Shadow came around. Yeah,
I think he was starting to move, and basically that's when they made the Dougie Walsh made the decision to send his horse, and then he was such a famous horse during those years. It was kind of like, it was, you just went to watch him. And I mean, there have been so many great horses over the years, but this was just one kind of point in the 80s where for me as a young, like a kid, a teenager at the time, I remember just being so excited. I was always interested in the racing for the sport of it, and it's just such a great sport, and too bad that things have turned out the way they've turned out in St. John, and because it once was one of the major hot spots, and year-long racing and racing through some pretty bad conditions over the years.
I have a couple of videos. You probably see them if you look back. I have actually 84. There's one where it's straight fog.
Straight fog.
Trying to call it.
You can't see. Like you literally, like the horses go into the fog, and there's kind of silence, really, because it's, what do you say? And sometimes it's not until they're partway down the stretch that you're not picking it up to the point where you can actually see who, which horse is where.
Yeah.
And
the snow's the same way.
Snow is the same way. But yeah, those days were great. They were some of the great days of racing in St. John and in the Maritimes, I think.
So let me ask you a question regarding Ingham, because I had excuse me. I came across an article in Telegraph Journal about yourself, how you came across Ingham. Was that, I think, was it your father selling a car, or was it your friend's father that was selling a car? I could be wrong. And Ingham invited you and your friend up to the room, I guess they call it where you announce races.
Up in the judges' stand.
Yeah. He invited you guys up when you were kids or something.
Well, I don't know. I don't remember that.
It could have been someone else. I could have read it.
Yeah. The way it came, the way I remember it coming about was I'm not sure if it was through Doug Caldwell at the time, who was the manager of the races, or how, or maybe through Scott Waddell. But somehow I got up to the judges' stand and was offered the job of an assistant timer. So I kind of stood behind the chief timer with a stopwatch, and just to confirm the times of the races that we were the same or within a fifth of a second, or I mean, because at that point you're using you're using stopwatches, just two stopwatches. And so that's how it started for me. And then that person, the chief timer, left, and I kind of moved into that position, and then started calling some races. And then, I mean, Ingham really, for me, was responsible for my career in broadcasting, really,
Yeah.
because he introduced me to. I was always interested in radio as a kid.
Mhm.
Kind of always thought that was a neat thing. And Ingham was at the time part of this really popular morning show on CFBC
Oh yeah,
radio.
I remember it. Yeah.
Everyone listened. Like the whole. It was the station to listen to at the time. And AM radio, when AM radio was still something. And
Mhm.
and so of course I listened to that all the time. I listened to his race, his race recaps, and when he would call in after
Yeah.
every couple of races on the
Yeah.
radio. And so anyway, he said to me one day that they were looking for someone to answer the phone on Saturday nights in the newsroom at CFBC and take down sports scores. And
Mhm.
would I be interested in doing that? And so I said, yeah, sure, why not? And so he said, well, come by the radio station someday. And I kind of hounded him on that. And,
Yeah.
and so finally one day he said, yeah, come on in this afternoon. And so I went in, and he says, well, while I have you here, he says, why don't you, and he gave me this sheet of paper with sports on it, with sports
Mhm.
scores and stories on it. Like it was almost like a little, like a short sports cast, maybe a
Mhm.
minute long. And he brought me up, and he got me. He got me to record this.
Mhm.
And anyway, to make a long story short, he liked what he heard at the time, and I ended up going to work for CFBC, doing weekend sports,
Nice.
and at the same time, timing the races and doing the post parades and that sort of thing. And Ingham would pick me up at the radio station in his CFBC sports car when I was finished on the air on Saturday, and we drive to the racetrack.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
that went on for quite a few years. That was awesome. And so I just kind of moved into calling races after that. And in the summertime when Ingham was, if he was on vacation, he had a trailer in Maine that he went to. He got to the point where he trusted me enough that I could get the job done. And I was so thankful that he did that, because it wasn't work. It was never ever work when I was at the track, at the racetrack. It was always just fun all the time.
Yeah. And it's something you love, right?
It's just, it didn't matter. I mean, you'd love it when they would break records, or they would,
Mhm.
the whole thing back then, I mean, was that 2-minute mile,
Mhm.
and when Clipper Sealster broke that in Fredericton, and
Yeah.
and we came so close. And I remember there was a time I was timing the races, and if I'm not mistaken, we had 3 races go in 1:59 and 4 in one
2
card.
days. It was
Or
2
in
days.
2 days. Was it 2 days?
Yeah, the night before, and then the next day they got it twice.
Yeah, it was
Wally got it, and Gemini Risk got
Gemini
it.
Risk. Yeah, Gemini Risk got it, and I think a horse called BJ Allen.
Yeah, Wally got that, and then
Yeah.
Jimmy Doherty got it the night before. He broke it the night before, and then
with
I can't remember now.
I can't
It was
recall. I
83.
can't remember. Yeah, is it? Yeah, and I was timing that, and
Mhm.
and especially when these races were exciting, like you're almost shaking, like you're trying, and you're trying to concentrate and not,
Yeah.
and
Get into it too much.
and oh yeah, but if it wasn't for Ingham, really, I wouldn't have been fortunate enough to kind of get close to the races in that way. So I'm really grateful for that. And I was kind of proud to, to call him a friend. Really, we were friends, and still miss him.
Yeah, he was a great guy. I met him a couple of times. My grandfather was friends with him. So my grandfather owned Scotch Garmin and stuff. So my grandfather was friends with a lot of them.
The name, Scotch Garmin for sure.
And I remember my grandfather took me up to meet him one time when I was like, I think I was 5 or 6, and it was just like, you're going to, it's like, I always joke around, but it's like, do you want to go meet a celebrity, basically? Because to me,
well, he was,
like, he was God, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the sports world, in the local sports world, and which included harness racing, and I think he just had that love for harness racing.
Yeah.
I remember before he died, he was ill, but he still was looking at a race program.
Yeah.
At some point, I had visited him, and he still had that race card out, and so that kind of shows how important the sport was to him, and he gave back so much to it,
Oh yeah.
just through his, I mean, not just through his race calling, but his dedication. Like his writing for post calls, among other places he wrote for,
Yeah.
and did stories for, just to promote the sport. He gave, like, you couldn't count the hours that he put in, and he became, he was just kind of came with Exhibition Park. Like, he just was he was just part of it all. And like EPR was Ingham Palmer, really. I mean, to a certain degree, when you thought about EPR, you thought about Ingham calling his races, and he had such a unique voice and a unique way of calling races that when you're learning to call, when you're picking up a style, it's hard not to kind of copy that. Yeah. And so I'm sure I did the same thing, and just it's just something I think that happens because you're used to hearing him all the time, and he was always had visitors up there in his booth where he called the races way back in the day, and lots of stories, lots of great funny stories, and he was a trickster too. He loved to tease, and he loved to play tricks on you and do all these sorts of things.
You got any certain one you want to share with us so you can tell us? You got to tell us.
Oh,
yeah.
Like he would one thing he would do, and you knew he was going to do it, but you fell for it anyway. Was I might be down the other end of the judges' stand by where the camera was, or I might be in talking to a charter or one of the judges or something, and he would holler out the door, "Andrew, I need to talk to you about something. Come here." And I said, "Ingham, you don't need to talk to me." No, and I mean, he goes, "No, come here. No, I'm seriously." And he would act like he was angry.
Yeah.
And so you'd kind of like, "I know what you're going to do, Ingham. You do this all the time." He goes, No, seriously, I want to talk to you about something. Come in and close the door." And so, okay, you'd come in and you'd close the door, and he says, "How you doing anyway?" Or something like that. Didn't want me at all. Didn't care. And I'm just look at him, and he would just chuckle, and away we'd go. He was famous. He was famous for stuff like that.
Yeah.
And but he put so much effort into when there were big races and post parades, and the history, and his writing was just so unique and good. When he was in like those post parades for the provincial cups in the 80s, where you had the spotlights, and he was also coordinating when he wanted the horses to come out. And I guess I was doing that too, because I had a walkie-talkie, and so he's reading his script, and then he's halfway through his script, and you want the next horse to come out, and so everything had to kind of come together to try to have a flow to it, and he was all part of that, and at the same time delivering a flawless introduction to the horse. And sometimes there was the horse had a cooler on it or whatever, and however they were going to do it, which sometimes it varied from year to year. And he just was. It just showed his dedication in how he prepared for things like that, and how much it meant to him. And like the Barrieau McIsaac and events like that, the Alexander Memorial, I mean, I could go on, just watching how he took care to talk about the people that were involved like Francis McIsaac's family, for instance, or Rufin Barrieau's family, for instance, and how much that meant to him. That's the sense that I got, and I was really kind of lucky to kind of have experienced that.
Yeah, he had a very great reputation. Like I said, when I met him, it was like I don't remember much about it, but I was pretty happy. So yeah. That's great. I appreciate that. That's some great stories there about Ingham.
Oh yeah, no problem.
All All right, so that was Andrew Cromwell. Obviously, Ingham had a huge impact on Andrew, and it's funny because I remember the Marcel Gilles when we did. Andrew calls a big race, and we're like, "Who is that person?" We're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
And
no, I
just
just,
I had 19 messages let me know who it was pretty quickly.
yeah, and I was guilty of going blank as well because, as I said earlier in the broadcast, Scott, it was Andrew Cromwell who was doing the announcing that exhibition week when Ingham and I were doing the racing analyst job.
Yeah, great guy, real good guy, great stories.
Yeah, and again, it emphasizes how much Ingham mentored people. And Andrew come right out and said that he made such a big difference in his career, and he had a passion for radio and for broadcasting, and Ingham certainly played a major role in him achieving that.
And the thing is, I'll say it quickly before we bring on the last one, because I said that was not the last one. We have one more to come.
Yeah.
Well, technically two. We have the Hall of Fame at the end. For Ingham to give these people chances, I think is a big deal. When Andrew said, Ingham brought him in and, gave him a chance. When, he didn't really have to do that. Ingham could have been like, no, I'm just going to do my own thing. And he was not like that. Very, good person like that, I think. It's what it seems like.
Yeah.
It was great like that.
What can happen sometimes in one's career is you might feel threatened about competition if you mentored or gave people a lot of advice and a lot of knowledge that you had and from your experiences. And you might not want to do that, but that's not the way Ingham operated. He was always about what was best for the sport and for almost all the people involved in the sport. Not selfish in any way.
I would like to find. And we're gonna go into the next one here in a second. I posted something with Ingham on the Facebook page. And one of his daughters, I want to think it was maybe Ruth, told a really funny story about Ingham. Ingham going to the track, driving down Rothsay Avenue, and being late. It's like, say they go to post at 2 o'clock. It was 2 o'clock back in the day, right?
Yeah, 2 o'clock, or then 1:30 after that. Yeah.
So he's trying to get there, and he's getting to be late. So he cuts through the Irving parking lot, the gas station, to get there quicker. Yep. Cop behind him. Ingham doesn't stop. Goes in the parking lot of EPR, gets out, and says, "I gotta go. We're going to post in 5 minutes. Just come with me." And brought the cop up with him the cop with him up the stairs and sat in the booth and watched him call a race. And Ingham showed him around the racetrack and stuff. And I was like, "Yeah, no, it's fine. Let it go."
Yeah.
And
that's one way to get out of a ticket, but at least the officer realized he wasn't telling the story; he was telling the truth.
Yeah, so I think Ingham charmed a few people back in the day too, like that. Yeah. But that's a great story. They wrote that on the Facebook page, and Ruth told me some stories. I won't tell all, but I think back in them days, if you were known, you could do a few things that maybe we're supposed to be doing.
Well, there was always police officers working at the racetrack doing security, and also they were there as fans too. So yeah, he was well known in all the different parts of the city.
So that was a fun one. All right, so I'm going to hop in to the last interview that we have, and this one's with a really great guy. He's been on a few times. He's been on by himself. He's been on with Gilles. So Marcel Barrieau brings up.
I think I heard of him. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, don't forget, Marcel's the first guy we ever actually had on that wasn't me and you doing a podcast together.
Yeah, that's right.
I was still shocked. I'm still shocked to this day he agreed. So I'm going to bring Marcel's interview on, and then we'll come back and kind of chat up a little bit about what Marcel talks about. Yeah. So let me go grab it here. And Marcel, where's your interview at? We are Marcel. And here it comes. All right, everybody. So our next interview is with another legend of EPR, Mr. Marcel Barrieau, who is definitely a fan of Ingham, like all of us were. So I'm going to bring him on right away. Marcel, how are you doing today?
Good, Scott.
Good. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. I knew you spoke highly of Ingham when we did the first interview, so I didn't think it was too hard to get everybody to come on. I think it's not hard to get anybody to come on. I have to kind of pick who I bring on for this one because everybody wants to come on for Ingham, right? So, but yeah, so basically, I'll just kind of hop into it. Like, you came into EPR, what was it, like? You said 71, 72?
72, in the fall of 72, yeah.
And so, like I've asked everybody, I asked Wally the same thing. Like, right, like when you come in, like you're coming in from Moncton, right?
Yeah, yes, I was. Yes.
So you know, like you must already know who Ingham is. Like you guys have an idea before you come in.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you a story about Ingham.
Yeah.
I was in Moncton way before I got in. Well, not before I got into the business. I was in business, but I was still going to high school,
Mm-hmm.
and I was training horses there. And like Ingham was general manager of Brunswick Downs then.
Yeah.
Uh, One day he called me. He said, "Are you going to get your driver's license?" Well, I said I wasn't thinking just yet. Like he said, because my father, he was strict on that. You work and earn it, like before we went anywhere else. So he said you should get your license. He said, I got a fellow coming in from USTA. We were under USTA rules then.
Mm-hmm.
He said he's coming in tomorrow or whatever day. He said, come on in my office, and he said, I'll set you up and you can write your license. He said, it's not going to cost you nothing.
Yeah.
So in I went. And he said, sure enough, that's who persuaded me or to get my license that quick. Anyways.
Yeah. So he started Brunswick Downs and then he moved to EPR, and I think it was 59 or no, it would have been later than that, because that would have been, I don't know when it was. I think he was back and forth. But I think he was in EPR full time in the late 60s. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, he was there way before I was there.
Yeah. Because I interview Aubrey later. Now Aubrey will tell me probably the date and everything, because Aubrey knows all that stuff. So I mean, we talked about, like, me and Wally were talking, and I think you said the same thing. I talked to you and Gilles about it last time. Like, Ingham's great, but when you're racing, you're not really hearing him. You guys are in your own little world. You're zoned in. You're not listening to Ingham call the race.
No, and plus the fact that the speakers are not set up to go around the track, so
Yeah.
We hear a little bit in the straightaway, but you're in action then, so you don't pay attention or you don't hear really. Yeah.
It's funny. I actually was talking to Wally, and I put it in his interview. I talked to you about this before. There's a race that you win in 1985 that Ingham calls the race, and now from what I remember ever watching, now other people can testify to something else. It was the only time I ever heard Ingham go silent, because you probably don't remember this race, but there was a horse there called Wrestling Master, and Stevie Mason was driving him. I think it was his first start, maybe his first or second start. And you guys go around the first turn, and if you see it, you'll see it on the podcast. You'll see the horse. He's veering. He's kind of coming off like he's not with everybody else, and you don't see it in the camera. And all of a sudden, Ingham's calling the race, and he goes dead quiet. And you hear, someone in the background. Wrestling Master went through the fence, and you won that race.
I remember that. That race. Yeah.
And
I remember that race. I guess he choked him off, because usually when a horse chokes off, you got no control of it. So that's probably why he went through the fence.
You can see him. You can see him doing it. Like I rewatched it. You can see him. Like, he's in trouble before he goes to that fence. Like, there's something wrong. And I think I taught this because Stevie Mason was driving him, and I've been in the barn. I think I talked to Stevie. I think Stevie. It was either Stevie or someone else told me that the horse was fine, but Stevie had to duck because the wood was coming towards his head when he was going through that fence, right? But it was just one of the crazy things for Ingham. And people will see it. They might have seen it already, depending on how I set the interviews. He's like really quiet, and then you win the race, and he overdubs. Like, this is what happened to Wrestling Masters. They show the fence, and the way I edit the video, it shows it. But it's one of them rare occurrences that Ingham gets a little quiet, and it's I've heard him laugh too. It's actually funny when I did the Barrieau McIsaac '98 video. I edited out, and Ingham drops the F-bomb by mistake. He's on a live mic. It was like, he's like, holy blank, about the finish of a race, and it was great. But so any more memories? Like, you guys were a little, I won't say wild in the '70s, but you guys had a lot of fun in the '70s, I'd assume.
It was great days, and especially with the horsemen that you had to deal with. They were coming from the island, and they were the best ones, and the best horses were coming. So it was really competitive.
And
there wasn't. I remember when I first went there, there wasn't a stall to be had.
yeah,
You know, and I had to wait after exhibition week to get in there because the stalls were always full. And yeah.
I was gonna say Ingham had a lot to do with like the promotions of it and stuff like that. And I know Ingham liked to have a couple of sodas after the races. Because Wally told me a story with Pen and Play. They had a bus, and Ingham it became Ingham on their last. So, did you ever hang out with Ingham like outside of the races, like at night? Because I know you guys used to have gatherings at my grandparents' house back in the 70s too.
Oh yeah, we used to go to different places. Like I remember, like your Nicholson's and your grandfather, and
Yeah,
we used to gather somewhere for a party or whatever.
yeah,
Especially like there was parties if somebody won a big race too, like
yeah. Oh, I heard the stories.
my crew there, the Bride Mervyn, they closed a tavern in St. John.
Really?
Have a party on a Saturday night. Yeah.
It's we're kind of going off at the topic of Ingham, but I don't know if this is a myth. This might be true. I don't know if this is a story, but I heard a story that I was really little. I was probably like 3 or 4, and this could be wrong. I don't know if this is true or not. But you guys were all at my father's house having some drinks, and that's old school. Like back then, the kids we stayed in the room and played with our toys. It didn't matter,
Yeah.
And either you fell asleep in my toy closet or something, but I woke up and see you in my toy closet. So I'm like, see you in my toy closet sleeping.
Yeah.
I just find it's great times. I love hearing the stories about the old days. It's awesome. And I know Ingham, he was definitely not shy about having some fun with the guys after the races and stuff.
Oh, for sure. He dropped by, if you win a big race or something, like win the Alexander, he'd always drop by the barn and have a couple of beers or whatever was being served.
Yeah. No, it's great.
Oh.
So I have a video. Basically, the way this video works is I have the end of the 84 Provincial Cup, and then we show the entire 85 Provincial Cup, which I just got because I sent you that a few weeks ago. And the reason I'm doing 2 things because Ingham he does awesome on commentary, and another reason I personally wanted to do it was with Angel's Shadow. I'm a big football fan, as you see in my background.
Yeah.
I have my flag, right, and I have a lot more in the house. There's flags everywhere in the room, and I look at this with Angel's Shadow, and you can confess this if I'm right or wrong. Being a football fan, being a big Kansas City fan, when they played New England in the AFC Championship game one year and lost. And I wasn't upset. I said, that's fine because they're just getting there. Next year, they'll get there and they'll be good. And the next year, they'll win the Super Bowl. And I look almost like Angel's Shadow like that because I watched this race and we'll show it where Angel's Shadow is still young, finishes 3rd in the competitive race. And then the next year basically cleans out the whole field except for the finish. Would you agree with that? That kind of like that 84 Alexander, he was still not coming into his own?
Well, for sure, because as a 2-year-old, he was struggling a little bit around the turns and stuff like that. So I didn't over-race him, just a few starts. And as a 3-year-old, he was that much better.
Yeah.
And what helped him a lot is when I went to Montreal as a 3-year-old in the fall, he had no money made. And I think he went 6, 7 in a row there, going up to classes,
Yeah.
And he got brave and he got to carry his speed too, and getting around the 5/8 was much better for him. So he matured quite a bit there, from him going to Montreal. So then as a 4-year-old, when I come back, that's an 85.
Yeah.
Then he could compete with the big boys,
And question about this before I'm going to jump into this race real quick, but I have a question about, everyone talks about in real, definitely, obviously, Winner's Accolade, Angel's Shadow, definitely Gemini Wrists are the top horses in that thing. Waveward, nobody talks about Waveward, and that horse beat Winner's Accolade a couple of times, but nobody really mentions him within them horses. He never really gets brought up.
I can mention him to you because in '85, Webby sent him to me in Montreal.
Okay.
And I had him and Angel Shadow, and they both ended up in the top class after Angel win 5 or 6. He was in the top class, and I had 2 in the top class at that time, and either Mike McDonald drove him or somebody else. But Wavor was a better horse. He was all around, he was stronger and faster, and I come back home in this spring, and I kept Angel Shadow, and then I sent Wavor back to Webby's.
Yeah.
And then we competed against each other. But Wavor beat the top class as well as Angel Shadow in Montreal. Like, yeah, one time there was a photo finish for the win.
Yeah.
Angel Shadow and Wavor, and they kept us on the track for about 5 minutes because they didn't have the fast photo finish then.
Might be this one here. It might be this one. You guys were on there for a while. Keep going. It might be 85, but keep going.
Yeah, and he ended up Wavor beat me by whisker, like, you know.
Okay.
But I had the pair of them. Yeah.
Interesting. No, it's crazy. People don't really talk about that horse much. All right. Well, I'm going to bring up the race here again. This is the end of the 84 Alexander, 84 Provincial Cup. Then we go into the 85 one, and we'll talk about that when it's done. So it's coming up right now.
On third, Supreme Jade is fourth. Daddy Warmark's going up to fourth. Supreme Jade is fifth. 128 and 4 by the 3/4. Into the top turn, Winner's Accolade. Look who's at his wheel. It is Angel Shadow, and he's coming on. Daddy Warmark's to the outside. Pearl's Falcon on the inside. They swing for home. Winner's Accolade, Angel Shadow driving up a strong second. Winner's Accolade, Angel Shadow. Here comes Supreme Jade. Here comes Daddy Warbucks to the wire. It is going to be Winner's Accolade, Supreme Jade, Angel Shadow. Time for the mile. 59 and 3. Cup 8, approaching the top of the stretch, a field of 6. Island Fellow with Clark Smith. Supreme Jade with Yves Fillion. Winner's Accolade with Mike McDonald. Angel Shadow with Marcel Barrieau. Wavor with Dave Pinkney. Gemini Risk with Steve Mahar, and here they come. They're off, and Angel Shadow bids for the ladies 3 wide, showing on top. Supreme Jade is on the rail and racing to the top now. Winner's Accolade in between horses, racing a third. Island fell up on the rail. He is a fourth. Wavor fifth. Gemini Risk. By the 8th, they go up the backstretch, racing to the quarter, and Angel Shadow goes to the top. There goes Winner's Accolade up on the outside, but Supreme Jade drives to second. Winner's Accolade backs off. He settles for cover on the rail. He's racing third now. Island Fella fourth. Then it's Wavor and Gemini Risk in that opening quarter in 28 and 1. Around the top turn, Angel Shadow by a length and a half. Supreme Jade is racing a second. Winner's Accolade third. They swing through the stretch and come to the half, and it is Angel Shadow. Supreme Jade is second. Winner's Accolade is third. Here comes Wavor. Up on the outside, he goes to fourth. Island Fellas racing fifth, and Gemini Risk is the trailer. They were by the half in 58 and 1. Around the turn, they go to the 5/8. It is Angel Shadow, still by a length and a half. He's the leader by the 5/8, and it's on to the 3/4 now. Angel Shadow, Supreme Jade, Winner's Accolade. Wavor is fourth. Island Fellow fifth, and Gemini Risk. It is Angel Shadow, the leader by the 3/4. Supreme Jade is the second. 127 and 1 by the 3/4. I say again, 127 and 1. It is Angel Shadow, Supreme Jade driving a second. Winner's Accolade and Wavor is fourth. Now they're fatting out 3 wide. Angel's Shadow, Wavor, Supreme Jade. 3 of them neck and neck to the wire. Here they are. It is too tight to call. Looks like maybe Angel's Shadow will need a photo. The time for the mile, 1:57. And the photo shows the winner of Provincial Cup 8 to be number 4, Angel Shadow.
So yeah, that was an awesome race. That was, that race was so hard to find. I looked everywhere for it, and then when I met up with Donna and Blaine, I was at their place, and I asked them. I said, "Do you have Provincial Cup 85?" And they, "Oh yeah, definitely." And when I got home, I dug through them tapes. Where's 85? Where's Like I got it up to the office and I got that in that VCR so quick to watch it because that's my that was my go-to. That's my. I think that's the first year I actually got to go and be at Provincial Cup as a kid, and it's a huge deal.
See, like we were saying there, 3-year-old, he was struggling around the turns, and he kind of lost ground. And as a 4-year-old, he was gaining ground around the turns. But he raced against that Supreme Jade in Montreal, like, you know, in the top class, and he was a good horse. But just to show what kind of horse Waybor was, where he come from there, that was his big thing. It finished the miles like unbelievable. Like he was, he was a super horse. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and like I love Ingham when Ingham's like 127. He repeats it 127. Yeah. Like I remember being a kid and not really getting. See, I didn't understand fractions and stuff as a kid. I knew like the breaking like 150s were big, right? But I remember being like when he would announce things and people would lose, like would get loud, like they get super excited. He was great. Like I mean, just a great announcer. And when I've said it a couple of times, when I started doing the converting, the first thing I heard was Ingham's voice, and it just brought me back to the old days being there. Yeah,
like his voice, even when you listen to him on the radio, like he's just kind of rolling voice. It rolls.
Yeah.
Same thing. That's why he was so good with the races. He just kept it rolling, like and he even made calls that he knew we were going to make as drivers before.
Before you did it.
Yeah.
Now he was quickly. I won't keep it too long, Marcel. But I just wondering something. Now this is a question that I might have to ask Russell, or I'll ask you, or anybody. When Andy's son broke the 2-minute, like when he set the track record in EPR, did they do that in like was that a time trial that he did that in?
Yeah, it was kind of a match race because Webby owned both horses and they just put 2 horses in. But he went 2 minutes. The other one was just in the way really, and then they went to Moncton that same night. He called two or three recalls, and then they decided to go without him. But I mean, it was just Andy's son didn't need a prompter. But to make it official, I guess they call it a match race. Yeah,
because I know Ingham like had something to do with that happening. I read an article where Ingham I think Ingham maybe went to Doug Caldwell and said, "Let's do this" or something along them lines.
Yeah.
Like Ingham had such a mind for it. Like he always thought about different things to do to make the sport better, right?
Yeah.
Which is a good. I think I wasn't around in the 70s. I was a baby, so I didn't know anything was going on. But by reading stuff in like the past few years, doing the history of it, I think Ingham. Doug gets a lot of credit, and Doug deserves a lot of credit. But I think Ingham deserves a lot of credit too because he had a lot to do with a lot of that stuff going on down there.
Yeah, but all the horse that came down for Provincial Cup, he was making the phone calls. He was getting in touch with the trainers or drivers or whatever, he needed. And he was doing all the organizing, for the Provincial Cup, Colin Weiss, because, he could get the job done too that way. Because he ran the Moncton track for years too. That's all he ever done, general manager of a racetrack or whatever, and then he went there to St. John and announcing. But he was a helpful hand in racing office too, different things like promotion, like you said, and they depended on him quite a bit.
And they did some interesting ones. They did some promotions that worked, some that didn't. There's a couple that were a little interesting. I'll have to look up some. I'll bring up some articles and put them on the podcast. It's like anything like that. Like you kind of throw, if you get 80% that works and 20% that doesn't work, that's a good track record. I just seen a couple of promotions that were a little. There was one an envelope promotion. I was like, what the hell is this? I think I posted it once, but
even the driving championships there, he was the organizer behind that. He'd get a hold of us and would you participate in it, stuff like that. So,
well, it's I'll say now to the business now is a lot different than it used to be. But there's some people in the Maritimes. I mean, Truro, kind of looking pretty rough there. They're having a great year. I mean, that Steve guy, Steve's running. Steve Fitzgerald, I think his name is. I've had him on. He's doing it. He's doing promotions. He's running. Their bet's going up. So if you get the right people that are passionate enough in there, that are willing to put in the hours and put in the 10, 12-hour days, you can get something out of it. You know, you can't just go to work at. If you call a race at 12, and you're the general manager, you can't roll into work at 12 or like 11:45.
No,
That's not how harness racing works. It's an all day, all night thing, right? So, and I also want to add Marcel to about Ingham before we go.
No, only that he was a great friend too. Like, you could talk to him any time. You'd call him and talk to you about different sports too. Like, we used to have different things too. Curling, like, at the end of the year, like we'd go to the racetrack, like we'd get the ice through Mike Murray there.
Yeah.
And he'd always show up for all these things, like, and it was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's good. Awesome, Marcel. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on. I'll let you get back to enjoying your day of rain that you said you're having out there. We finally got sun.
Yeah. No, we're getting rain. Yeah.
Well, we gave you that rain. You can enjoy it because I'm going to go out my backyard and do some work so I can enjoy the nice weather. I think we get for like 2 more days and then it's back to rain again. But we're heading up to Woodstock tomorrow, which people are going to be watching us going, what are they talking about? This is Monday. So we're heading up to Woodstock tomorrow. It's supposed to be plus 33, and I'm not a big fan of the heat. So we're going to lots of water and lots of Gatorade and hydrate, but it'll be a fun time.
And I see they got a nice card there too.
Yeah, it looks good. Yeah, I think we'll have a good time. It's going to be a lot of fun. Lots of people are going up and stuff. So, yeah.
I'm glad they keep the Roof and Barrieau Memorial keep going. So
yeah, and it's a big person. It's like 50,000. But yeah, it's always a good time, and I love that. Like that's our provincial cup now. Provincial cup's gone. Alexander's gone. Roof and Barrieau Memorial. Yeah. That's Kaiser Memorial. That's our big race now. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. A big crowd, hopefully. It'd be nice if I could promote it more, but like I said, by the time we put this out, it will be over. So, but all right, Marcel. Well, thank you very much for coming on. Good luck in the future.
My pleasure, Scott. Anytime you can do something, we appreciate you doing all this for harness racing. Keep it in interest in it.
I know. I love doing it. So I appreciate everybody coming on. So enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And I will talk to you soon.
Okay, Scott. Thank you very much.
Take care, Marcel. You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right. That one actually didn't go too bad. And P.S. We didn't go to Woodstock. We did not go to Woodstock.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Yeah, Woodstock didn't happen. So
I didn't go. I got a call from Waddell on he called me Friday, and it was at that point it was saying plus 41. I'm like, dude, no, I am not doing plus 41. This is before the storms even hit, obviously. Yeah. So I'm sitting home watching the races, and I text Waddell, and I'm like, man, we dodged a bullet, buddy. I said, like, because we were still on the fence in the afternoon, but thankfully it didn't go.
Well, I've been caught in serious thunderstorms in Woodstock, and you'll read about it in an upcoming book later on this summer.
Oh, what book's that, Russell? Is that a book that you've talked about like 4 times already? Want to do the cover up for you one more time? Here, we'll do it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Scott. But yeah, there's a story about a serious storm in Woodstock as well in there. So no, that's great. Thanks very much, Scott, for doing that.
No, I tease you, but it does look like a good book. I'm not just saying that. I'm looking forward to it. It does look good. Yeah. So, you want to show a picture of you again before we go as a youngster there?
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me of that, Scott. Yeah.
How old were you there, Russell? What do you think?
I was 33.
33.
Yeah.
Still a pup.
Yeah. There you go. But I was when we watched that race, Marcel, just his recollections are always so accurate and right on. But I couldn't help notice that Angel Shadow, I had kind of maybe forgotten that's some field he beat that night. Green Day, Winner's Accolade, Gemini Risk, and Wave War. And he did it by fighting them all off to the finish. So that was a great race as well, the 85 Provincial Cup.
And I'll say something about that. I think, when people watch this podcast, I obviously edit it. When we're doing the Andrew Cromwell interview, we had some technical issues Well, I think whatever happened fixed everything. If you notice, we watched that, everything's fine again.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah.
It's this site has a mind of its own. But I'm sorry, Russell. Keep going. Keep talking.
No, it's fine. It's just saying that Marcel brought up another common theme that Ingham was not just in broadcasting, not just in management and promotions, but he was right there with the horsemen as well, and always available to them. So another important point brought up by Marcel.
I'm gonna, before we end it, I'm gonna let everybody know that we're basically gonna end our stuff right here in a minute or two, whenever.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pop up. I'm gonna throw a couple more clips of Ingham up. I have a few more. There's one from the World of Harness Racing. They have an interview with Ingham. I'm gonna put that up after this, and then right after that's over, it's Ingham's Hall of Fame when he gets inducted into Hall of Fame in 1997.
Right.
Hall of Fame. That's how the podcast will end for everybody.
Yeah.
So,
no, that's great because being enshrined in a Hall of Fame is the pinnacle for any athlete or any person that's involved in sports, and I'm sure that Ingham and his family are very proud of that night.
I'll tell you, that's a hell of a speech he gives. That is a great speech he gives.
There.
Him and Stevie are in there together. So
he had no problem speaking in public. That's for sure. But
loved it.
But one of the themes that we saw tonight, Scott, and I'll close, but just by saying this, that all the hats that Wally mentioned that Ingham wore, when you get right down to it, he was a genuine person, and I certainly was lucky enough to experience that for the week when we worked together, doing the race analyst, and so many other people got to witness that as well. So that's a pretty good title to have as being a genuine person. So thanks very much, Scott, for doing this. It wouldn't be the history of EPR without a story about the career of Ingham Palmer. So it's great that it all came together, and I'm very, very happy that all the other folks joined in, which I knew they would. And thank you for having me as well. And for plugging that book. I appreciate it, Scott.
Well, we'll definitely plug your book a bit more because we'll, as much as I tease you, I assume a lot of people are going to look forward to that book because it has some very interesting stories regarding my favorite era. Now, let me ask you before I jump on to the next part and show these clips of Ingham.
Yeah.
Years as a cover. Because you were born, in the 30s, right? You were born in the 30s, so does it cover the 30s?
Yeah, okay, that's enough of that. Can you put that picture back up of me in 1996, please?
Just crop it up. There we go.
Yeah, that wasn't the 1930s, all right. That was the late 1990s. So
what covers the 70s? Basically, we're covered in that book.
Yeah, and it's funny. Marcel gave it a plug by saying that was the most popular time of racing in Atlantic Canada was the 1970s. So, and I believe that to be true as well. And hopefully that comes through in the book.
No, I think it'll be successful. We'll get you a table somewhere. So maybe we'll get you up and get you up in Woodstock. We'll tie you up to a tree at a table. Be like, well, if Russell, if it's lightning out, then you gotta stay right here, buddy. But no, I appreciate you coming on, Russell. You're always a great help with it, helping out with everything and putting your anecdotes in. Appreciate it. And I will let you go back to what you're doing because we've been recording for a while. Yeah. I'm going to sign off and say to everybody, thank you for watching. Make sure to keep watching. Like I said, we have about probably 4, I don't know. I haven't actually, as we record this, I haven't put other stuff together yet, but we're looking at about another half hour worth of stuff after this. But again,
yeah, I think you can split it up pretty even in 2 halves, and it'll come together really good, Scott.
Yeah. So again, thank you, Russell, for coming on. For everybody watching, thank you very much. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page because I'll tell you before we go, I have a ton of tapes and I'm recording a lot of these tapes. I put them on the YouTube page, and some of them only had time to put them on the EPR page on Facebook. So check the YouTube page because there is videos on there. Yeah. I'll post up to 5 videos a day sometimes. If I'm in a zone of recording, I can post up to 5 videos a day for God bless Peter Ryan because he loves his videos. And so make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and all that good stuff. And until next time, we'll see you on another episode of the History EPR podcast. Thank you.
In the marathons, he's been at it the longest as anybody else. So I think he's a good race caller. Keeps us awake when the race is on. That's important.
Well, we're back here at Exhibition Park Raceway in St. John, New Brunswick. Now, this is our second visit here. When we thought on this visit, we would visit with one of the track's record holders. Now, this record holder is not a horse. He is the track's announcer, and he just happens to have been calling races in this country longer than anybody else.
Well, when I first started coming to race around in the 40s, and as far as Ingham goes, he's one of the best there is. Everybody knows him, he's well liked, and he's got a good voice for broadcasting races.
Ingham, he's pretty good. He's been calling races for quite a while. I've been coming here since 1984, and he's been doing them since I've been coming. And I understand he did them for 15, 20 years before this. He's the dean in the Maritimes. He's been at it the longest as anybody else. So I think he's a good race caller. Keeps us awake when the race is on. That's important.
His name is Ingham Palmer, and he's been calling races since 1954. That's 37 years, and nobody has called them any longer. Ingham works as a full-time sportscaster at a local St. John radio station, but twice a week you'll find him at Exhibition Park Raceway fulfilling a boyhood dream.
I grew up in Prince Edward Island, you know, knee-high to a grasshopper over there. And I got my first job as a radio announcer at CKCL in Truro. And for some reason or other, I wanted to call the races. I don't know why. I guess probably my upbringing on the island. And I couldn't get the job at the radio station, so I went to the track. And Carl McKenzie gave me the job. And so I was doing what I wanted to do. Why I wanted to do it, I don't know. But it's been a profitable hobby. It's been a lot of fun. Here they come. They're off. Trusty Bet grabs the top of the inside. Bengal Cobra racing second, and 4 wide. Big Dylan drives on third. Staplicker's in on the rail. Now they're finding out 3 wide as they race around the turn it on the outside. I don't like to yell. You know, I hear some announcers that just screech and holler at the tail end of them. You can't make them out. That's not announcing. That's not broadcasting. You don't do that in broadcasting. I don't think you should do it at the racetrack. I think you can maintain a flow. You start pick it up at the half. You increase it a little bit at the 5/8, and at the 3/4, increase it a little bit. Put a little bit more excitement into it. But don't blow your cool in the home stretch. 4 wide as they come to the line. Trusty Bet on the inside. Glengale Cobra on the outside. It's going to be Trusty Bet and Glengale Cobra. KM Dream tight between Stamplicker and Torrid Star. And tight between I Can Do It and Big Dylan. Time for the mile. 2:10 and 2.
After 37 years, it's obvious that Ingham Palmer enjoys what he's doing. But his real passion is for the horsemen who put on the show week after week.
I tell you that I have to take my hat off to the horsemen and the breeders, because what I have seen over the years is just a tremendous improvement in the quality of horses that our guys are turning out. We have excellent horsemen. You know, I've maintained for a long time that some of the boys from here, from Charlottetown, Moncton, Truro, where have you, they can go to the big time and they can handle themselves well. They've proven that. You know, Callie Rankin at Flamborough, Marcel Barrieau, Mike McDonald at Blue Bonnets, Jimmy Doherty, of course, going back to Earl Avery and Joe O'Brien, a lot of them. But we have sent our horsemen away. But the quality of maritime-bred performers, you've got a dandy in Toronto right now, J.K. Beauty, a Canadian seasons champion, all-time champion, 56-1 at that track in Truro last year. It's come a long way. It's come a long way in Ontario. And it's come a long way here.
Ingham, we've got less than a minute before the race. Do you remember way back when you might have had butterflies in your stomach at this point?
I tell you, the time I had butterflies, When I first went to the judges' stand in Truro, the stand was in the center field. And here I am with a microphone for the first time and a grandstand full of people looking at me. I sort of coaxed myself over to the side. Took a bit of getting used to.
In Norwood of St. John, Sam Hodges driving. 7 starters in race 6. Triactor and Quinella wagering is available. They'll take 1 score and go to the gate, and you have less than 3 minutes for wagering.
There's another Palmer in the broadcast booth. He's Ingham's son, Jamie.
He hasn't yet tried to call a race, but he's doing a pretty good job with the post parades and the results and so on. And someday he might grab the mic and the field glasses and try calling a race.
How would you feel about that?
I'd like to see him try it. I kid him about being chicken, and
Sometimes when you're the son of a celebrity, there's pressure for you to be just like Dad. Do you feel pressure to be an announcer and be Ingham Palmer II?
I feel a lot of pressure that way, yeah. Like here at EPR now, I'm doing PA work and that, but as far as announcing the race, it's like, I wonder if people would not compare it to the old man type of thing, that idea, and I just don't feel I could measure up, and I guess it's a matter of confidence, and but I do feel pressure that way, that if possibly if it wasn't him, I wouldn't be as pressured, but it's like, I not only have to be good, but I have to be as good as him, and that's pretty tough to do.
Are you having as much fun today as you were many years ago?
yeah. There are times, after working all day at the radio station, there are times that, I get up at 4:45 in the morning, and maybe a Wednesday night, you're dragging a little bit, and you think, oh, gee, I don't want to go to the track tonight. But you get here, you turn the mic on, and hey, it's a piece of cake. You're in business, you're having fun.
Inductee is a longtime friend and a fellow sportscaster, Ing the King, Ingham Palmer. He was called Ing the King with good reason. Born in 1933 in Summerside, PEI, Ingham Palmer was the voice of harness racing in the Maritime Provinces, calling races from the judges' stands in PEI, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. During a 42-year career, Palmer called more than 25,000 races, more than any other person in the history of Canadian harness racing. During his career, he also called races in Ontario, Winnipeg, and Montreal. As a sportscaster at CFBC Radio in St. John, Palmer promoted the races and helped to make St. John Exhibition Park the giant of maritime racing. His harness racing columns appeared in the Moncton Times, the St. John Telegraph Journal, and various other maritime publications. In 1973, Palmer was named sports director at CFBC and quickly became St. John's most listened to sportscaster. His main focus was amateur sports, promoting the city's and the province's athletes and teams. His morning sports editorials had a vast following as far as the CFBC signal carried. In his editorials, he pushed hard for lights to be installed at Memorial Field. He also pushed for a major winter sports facility in St. John. His Sunday morning sports talk show had an outstanding following, and again his focus was amateur sports. In his spare time, he owned and coached amateur hockey and baseball teams. Ingham Palmer, inducted into the St. John Sports Hall of Fame on May 8, 1997.
Thank you, Paul. And I think rather than going through with the usual formalities, the formal recognition of head table guests and all that stuff, I think I'll just do it nice and simple and say, hi, and a pleasant Thursday evening to you, sport. I was thinking of another approach.
Here they come. But it is a great honor being here and being inducted into the St. John Sports Hall of Fame. You know, damn it, I'm nervous. Done that call bit for 10 years. I thought Steve Mahar was going to be nervous. Anyhow, we'll get used to it. But pure and simple, can't be any doubt about it. My big mouth got me here. But I have to thank Sam Doyle for nominating me and the selection committee for their kind considerations. You know, I came here 40 years ago. Left a couple of times to go to Toronto, Winnipeg, and Moncton, but came back to my adopted home, St. John. Boy, a city steeped in sports history and tradition and blessed with countless colorful sporting personalities. You know, I can think of the rabbit and the hat, the crow, apples, pickles. There's Rip, Aber, Earl the Pearl, Dr. Dick, the Big A over at Thistle St. Andrews, Avery Stewart, and of course out at EPR, the Wiz, and Stevie Wonder. Now, over the years, I've had great moments watching these people perform in sports. They and many more people like them provided me with many, many great stories to tell, and I certainly enjoyed telling them. Like I can give you for an example, why at one time did we refer to Harry the Hat as Tiger Paws? And why did Billy Donovan nickname the hat one time as Trash Can Harry? There are two great stories, I tell you folks, but for Harry's sake, I'm not going to tell them tonight. Right now, though, I'd like to congratulate my fellow inductees, the St. John's, that basketball team from several years, a little bit before my time, before I came to St. John. But down through the years, I tell you folks that I've heard of the St. John's many, many times. And the St. Peter's baseball team from 1963. That was one year I left St. John to go to Moncton, so I missed the St. Peter's. But again, I've heard many, many stories, and I've told some of their stories over where Paul is standing down through the years. Charlie Sullivan. Boy, what a great name from a great curling family. Sullivan. See him sitting over there, Dr. Hearn, Charlie, Dave, Charlie Jr. Sullivan's the biggest name in curling in St. John and New Brunswick, no doubt about that. And you know, of course, there'll be more Sullivans enshrined in this hall. That young fellow over there, boy, did you do us proud this past winter. Chris Skinner. Now, I remember this kid when he was playing minor football out in East St. John. So I had the idea right then, way back then, that this kid was destined for greatness. I watched, like you people did, with St. John Pride as he graduated to high school football, had to go to Moncton for some of that, on to college ball at Bishop's, and then the big dream, the CFL. Can you imagine somebody from St. John making the CFL? Chris Skinner did. And now we come to Steve Mahar, a fellow that I call Stevie Wonder because he does wondrous things with a set of reins and a racehorse. He had a taste of the big time at Pompano Park in Monticello, as you heard just a moment ago. But he came back to have his two daughters gain a New Brunswick education, and that they did. But make no mistake about it, Stevie Mahar could still be in the big time today. But hey, we're glad we've got him at EPR. So, congratulations to you all. Now, I'm working off a script. And when you stray from a script, you ad lib. So I'm going to stray from the script a little bit, and I'm going to get some of you people out there to help me do this thing. And I wonder who the oldest person here might be tonight. It is not Ralph McClanahan. God, he's great. Anybody here 95? How about 93? How about 92? I'm going to ask you to stand. Introduce you to my mother. And I found out as I walked in, there's an old school chum here from Summerside who popped in, Paul Skierman. I taught him how to skate one time, and my mother wants to see you, Paul. So how about Ingham Palmer? Well, if one of you out there were to ask me what was the smartest thing that I ever did in my life, well, I'd have to tell you that the smartest thing was marrying a pretty little nurse in Truro way back in 55. And then, the next smartest thing, coming back to CFBC in 1969 to work again with Ralph McClanahan and Bob Lockett. And Ralph and I were in the sales department then. I'd be doing my thing also out at EPR, and Ralph was handling sports part-time. And on occasions, I'd have to pinch hit for Ralph. Like, well, if he was tied up in the afternoon out making a sale, I'd pinch hit for him. Or, like the time he went through the automatic car wash with the sunroof open, had a pinch hit for him then. And then the next smartest thing I did came in 1973 when Ralph became station manager, and a fellow called Mark Lee came on the scene as program director. For then, I left sales and became the sports director. A smart move? Sure, it was a smart move, but you know, I think that's probably one of the smartest things that Ralph and Mark ever did. And that's when things really started to roll. It was an opportune time because the St. John Mooseheads, they were starting to roll along the Hardy Cup Trail, or the Hardy Cup Trail. And I covered them as they played and beat Charlottetown, then Amqui, and then Paul Martin's Heroes, the Clarenville Caraboos, and then on to Emblem, and finally the Rosetown Red Wings. I guess you can remember the old LVR was really jammed to the rafters, and I can still close my eyes and see big John Dalton with a booming blast from the blue line. And St. John had its first National Hockey Championship. Let me tell you, that was one big thrill. Had more fun at that time, too, and I'd go to work in the mornings, and I'd pick up the Telegraph-Journal, and I'd read what Billy had to say. And then on the air, I'd take him to task, arguing my point against the old Buckwheat Bugle. Remember the Buckwheat Bugle, Billy? After the Mooseheads, many more thrilling moments in local sports, and you know, some disappointments too. Like the time I was the manager of the St. John Clearview 77s for Doug and Leroy Hatfield. We called the team the 77s in the Junior A League because at that time, St. John was putting in a big push to get the 1977 Canada Games. So it seemed appropriate that we call the team the 77s. This would be back in about 73. Then we came up with another idea. We thought, well, our captain was Mark Sire. Used to wear Gordy Dillon's old number 12. But we thought, even though at that time in hockey, you didn't see a number above 30, we decided we'd put the number 77 on the back of Mark Sire. And so we did. I can't remember whether we won the game or lost the game, but I do remember halfway through that game, Sonny McDonald coming out of his office at the Simons Arena and saying, Mark Lalonde had given the 77 Canada Games to Newfoundland. Boy, oh boy, were we ever disappointed. Bob Lockwood said he couldn't guarantee Lalonde's safety in St. John. But we got the games in 85. 11,000 people at the opening, 11,000 again at the closing, and then on top of all that we had the CFL games and at the Canada Games Stadium. And around then, things were really booming out at Exhibition Park. Well, the days of superstar horses like Power Baron and Scotch Garmin, and then along came Winner's Accolade, and boy, I tell you, those early provincial cup races, they were really something else. The best horses from the eastern seaboard of Canada and the United States. Third year we put one on, we set the maritime record for wagering. Those cups gave us our first sub 2-minute mile, Nero's BB and Gentleman Jim Doherty. You know, that was a goal that we had tried for years to reach. Tried and tried and tried. And all of a sudden, Jimmy did it one night. And you know, after all those years of trying, the very next day, that horse that Stevie drove, Jim and I risked, bred in St. John, paced in 1:59 4. And then the very next race, another maritime bred paced in 59 4. So it was a long, long time coming. But it's here many, many times since then. And now we're down to 154 3. Had some fun in Little League Baseball. I think probably I'm the only coach in Lancaster Little League to lose 2 championships in one day. I was helping Dick Fitzgerald, and the Tigers were playing against Harry Johnson, Freddie Johnson. Those boys played hard. And bottom of the 7th, they're the home team. We've got it won. And 2 out. I forget what the score was, but I know we're on top. 2 out, runners at first and second. Third man up, third kid up. A grounder down between first and second. And the kid running from first to second, hit him. Okay, you know, it's an automatic out. Runner interference, huh? The ump missed it. And that loaded him up. The next kid to come up was my goaltender. They went before, and he hits a grand slam. So there goes the Little League Championship. And then that afternoon, the Senior Little League Championship, I had to fill in for Vic. We're playing Dr. Eddie Lund's team. And boy, my kids are doing well. Halfway through the ball game, we're up 12-5. Eddie rallied his troops and beat us 13-12. And that was it, 2 championships in one day, gone. And I've never coached in the league since. Wasn't fired, but Vic never asked me back to help. And I'll tell you too, folks, that I had some fun in Lancaster minor hockey. And I had a lot of fun with the St. John Junior Beavers, a team I started sort of by accident and ran it for 11 years. And I was really surprised tonight and pleased to see that some of those kids that played for me 16, 17 years ago were here. So this is another part where I say, I'm going to get some help. So I'm going to get these kids to stand up. One had to leave. Billy Merrithew had to leave. But there's Billy McGuire. Billy, where are you? Stand up, Billy. Mark O'Brien. Billy Donovan Jr. Chris Colton. Chris Bartlett is here tonight. And my son Robbie, who played and then later on coached. Now you guys wore the sweaters and you did the skating, but you helped me for 11 years to help keep alive one of the greatest names of all time in maritime hockey, the St. John Beavers. And something else that gave me great moments, St. John Vito's winning the Allen Cup. You know, I grew up hearing of the great Moncton Hawk hockey team with Dud James and Sammy Twinkletoes McManus winning the Allen Cup, and then the year after the Halifax Wolverines, and I thought, gee, that was really something back in the 30s. And here I was, sort of almost part of the family with the St. John Vitos. It was sad to see their demise. And another big disappointment that I'm sure I shared with you folks, Heidi Hanlon. Boy, oh boy, remember how close she came to winning the Canadian Ladies Curling Championship. Last stroke, she's got the hammer, down it goes. You know she's going to win. It catches a hair, and off it goes. One tough break for Heidi. But again, I'm sure you're going to see her up here some night before too many years go by. And another disappointment, I guess we can sort of laugh at it for a while. Time we were all tuned in to see the Blue Jays play here. The Toronto Blue Jays in town. To take on Matt Stairs and the national team. Night before the game, it snowed, remember? So I've had my share of good moments and bad moments. Moments we all remember. As a Leaf fan and a Red Sox fan, you sort of get used to it. You realize that there must be some truth into the curse of the Bambino. You remember that ball going between the legs of Billy Buckner. And you remember Harold Ballard, what he did to downsize that hockey team. But we remain loyal and hopeful. So now we're all set for maybe 1997, 98. The Leafs might be a little better. One disappointment, though, I have to touch on as I leave you tonight. Something I don't want to get into. You know that we played, for a long time, the need for harbor station in St. John, and the coming of the planes, and the fact that we raised $30,000 at CFBC for the feasibility study. When it came time for that to come about, well, that was the time I first saw my lawyer. So anyhow, I just didn't become part of the St. John Flames family as I was with the Vitos and the Mooseheads before them. Sometimes things just don't work out the way you wanted them to work out. So that's it. My time has come and gone for tonight. Let me leave you by saying St. John sports have been good for me and my family, and I hope that I have been good for St. John sports. Thank you.
Just watch it, live it at Exhibition Park. Come on and live it at Exhibition Park. The real life fun harness race.